Okay, so there are a couple ways of looking at the value of costs. And if you ever do the PMP, there's about 4 or 5 different models that they expect you to be able to kind of understand and complete exams of or examples of. In this program, we're going to cover a couple of the more popular ones. So there's not a whole lot that we need to worry about. We just need to understand that there are ways of determining the value. So if you've got a team, you've got a financial analyst on the team or somebody looking at the finances, they may talk to you about these models, and it's important. So it's important that you understand what the models look like and how they're used. So basically both of them are looking at the financial cost of a project versus the benefits, and there are different time frames that are involved. So we've already talked about the key project metric. That'll be the main metric that the project is out to achieve. And recall, just as an aside, that there might be some secondary metrics that you're going to want to keep an eye on. For example, safety is one of those things. Yes, we can improve the system, but does it put our people at greater risk? So there's a balance between factors, sometimes multiple factors. So we want to make sure that we have some numbers, and the reason for that is at the end of the project, somebody's likely to say, okay, so what's the net value to the company? How did it help us? And it's good if we use a standardized model, preferably in advance, to project what we anticipate or what we're hoping to achieve, and then comparing that figure with the reality at the end of the project. Just as an aside, I did one project and we were expecting it to, get the company, maybe it was a big oil project, so it's huge. And so we expected a couple $1 million a year in benefit, and actually worked out to $53.3 million a year in benefit for the oil company. So that was a huge project. And that was the company's own numbers from their own finance people. Okay, so strongly recommended to update the cost-benefit analysis as each DMAIC phase, because your project charter, as we discussed yesterday, is really a draft until the project's done. And we know that when you get into the define, measure, analyze things, you're going to see things that you may not have seen before, and that may lead you down an entirely different path. So keep that financial analysis current. Keep validating it with your finance team. Make sure that they agree with your numbers. Otherwise, you end up looking like you're fudging some factors. So in the define phase, we talk about just making the case for the project. Why should we? What's the value for it? The middle section is about making sure that we are on track, or that we're chasing things that are of value and we haven't gone down a rabbit hole that are going to net us nothing. In control, we just want to make sure that whatever we're implementing is maintained, so we can get year after year benefits, or actually gains year after year. Okay, so these are some of and you will have seen some of these. So there's time value of money, and this is looking what you're spending now on a project versus what you're going to get in the future, or what you would get in the future with that money. And then this is kind of a backward calculation, and you think of what it costs you today to achieve that end that you're looking for, a year down the road. So that's a cost. It's like an opportunity cost. Second one is very simple. It's a return on investment. This is where you just look at the cost of the project and its benefits, and you compare that with the cost, and you want to have a positive gain in there. Sometimes, though, of course, if you're dealing with things like safety, you don't necessarily see a positive gain on the balance sheet. Sometimes it costs you money, which is quite fine too. The internal rate of return is another one, which is very similar to a net present value. It's the rate of return on invested money, invested versus spent on a project. and some of these others. So we're gonna catch a couple of these. So just cost benefit estimation. The benefits could include a direct revenue increase, waste reduction, including any process fees or handling fees. If there are environmental charges for your product, just operating costs, getting better performance, fewer defects and defectives. A market share increase is potentially available to you because you're devoting more, if you're able to devote more of your production to getting stuff out there into the market. Cost avoidance is about avoiding penalties or avoiding some of those charges like the environmental fees that you would incur during your normal operation. Could also be labor, avoiding, if you sometimes see companies running into overtime, they've got a production run, they've got to make X amount of product, and through a series of circumstances, they end up regularly driving some overtime costs to get that production number. Well, if we, those are kind of a hidden cost, not so much hidden, but costs that need to be addressed, need to be considered if that's an issue for your company. The customer satisfaction improvement, same thing. People are happy with what they're getting, and they're not getting a whole lot of superfluous stuff, and might choose your product over competitors. Associate satisfaction, these are the people you're working with, people on your shop floor typically, or anybody else in the firm that you're associated with. People tend to be happier when they see systems that are actually working well and aren't troublesome. People just want to come in and make sure the machines are running well, and not a whole lot of confusion or turmoil throughout the day due to equipment failures and the like. The cost of a project includes the administrative costs. So this includes things like managing your time, leading a project, the cost of people attending the meetings, any assets that belong to the team or that the team or the program, the initiative develops. It could be maybe dedicated space, workspace, or other types of things that apply directly. Maybe you need a computer or something along that line, which is an asset, but it's also equipment. So any equipment changes to the machinery or anything else you're using, even things like pens and Post-it notes. You can read the rest here. The delivery is the phasing of implementation. So this could be planning something and then the project management around getting that off the ground. It's a coordination step, like an administrative step. Real estate, if there's any changes there. Labor, we talked about in the other section as a benefit, an opportunity to improve the labor utilization. Training is definitely a cost, and often in projects that's built in. You're going to be getting a group of people in the room who know nothing. They don't really appreciate, if they're doing a project for the first time, they don't appreciate the DMAIC approach. So there is a fair bit of training that goes along with running a project, particularly if people are not familiar with it. And then consulting costs if you end up needing a consultant. Okay, so here's ROI. This is return on investment. This is a really common one, and it's also fairly simple. You take a look at the total benefits, you back out the total costs, and divide it by the total cost, and that gives you a percentage multiplied by 100. And that'll give you a percentage return on investment. So if the total benefits is $100,000 and the total cost is $50,000, then that's 50,000 over it'll be a total benefit of 50,000. So if this is 100, back out 50. So it goes 50 on top and 50 on the bottom. So that's 100% return on investment. Basically, it's saying, if you give me 50 cents, I'll give you $1. The net present value is about using a discounted cash rate, which is this calculation down here. And that looks at the time value of money. So this one, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on, other than understand that what we're looking at is the value of cash that you're investing in a project versus what you would expect to make from that if you were just to stick it in the bank at a certain interest rate. So is the money going to, if I invested $100 in your company and say 6 months from now, I expected a return of, so if I invested $100 and in 6 months from now, I expected $105, that's a 5% gain in 6 months. If I were just to stick that money in the bank at whatever 2% interest rate annually, there's no way I would get 105. I'd probably end up with about 101. So often the choice is, which project you invest in? And what we want to do is we want to invest in the higher yield ones first, typically, unless there's some other mitigating factor, like it's a big safety issue. So this is just a way of assessing the value of a project. Does it make economic sense to do it? And if we are choosing between 6 projects, which one is likely to return the biggest benefit in the shortest amount of time? Because then we can build on that, and then we've got more capital to play with. We can go and get the next project after that. So it's about harvesting a return in a timely manner.